The British far right is not famous for consistency. The anti-immigration movement has presented itself as defending women. Yet in June last year, The Guardian reported, or in June this year, The Guardian reported that 2 in 5 of those arrested at last summer's far-right riots had been reported for domestic abuse. That's a depressing statistic, which shows you just how seriously you should take far-right protesters suddenly claiming to be passionate about women's safety. A new report, though, has shown far-right hypocrisy on a more surreal level, let's say. Because it turns out that one of the key figures behind the protests against irregular migration across the Channel has himself been convicted for illegally smuggling migrants across the Channel. The man in question, called Lee Twomley, pictured here leading a Britain First march through Manchester earlier this summer. And Hope Not Hate wrote this. So they say, we can reveal that Twomley was previously jailed for 20 months as part of a Salford gang that tried to smuggle 11 Vietnamese migrants across the Channel to pay off drug debts. The gang made 2 bungled attempts to smuggle 8 men, 2 women and a child across the Eurotunnel in hire vans and were caught after failing to get insurance to drive in France. Twomley pleaded guilty alongside 4 others in 2016, the defendants receiving a combined total of 7 years and 8 months behind bars for their crimes. Now, it's not, in a way, this is a funny story. There are so few people who've been convicted of smuggling migrants. And there are so few people who lead far-right anti-migrant movements in this country. It just seems so surprising that someone is in the middle of the Venn diagram where they're both of them. But this guy is. Lee Twomley has appeared in another investigation this weekend. The Manchester Mill has reported that Twomley is one of the leaders behind the movement to raise England flags and Union Jacks around Manchester. Again, this is a movement ostensibly against illegal immigration, which is being led by a man convicted of illegally smuggling migrants. Earlier today, I spoke to the author of that piece in the Manchester Mill, Jack Walton, and I asked him how he connected Twomley to the Raise the Flag movement in Manchester.
We obviously noticed that flags were going up all around Salford first. Oh, as I say this, Lee Twomley's just texted me, actually. But we noticed that flags were going up all around Salford. And then on Wednesday last week, they appeared in the city centre all around Manchester, mostly Piccadilly Gardens. We were sort of searching around on sort of TikTok, online socials, that sort of thing, for who was doing it. There was an account called Salford T-Bone, which appeared to be the kind of main person sharing videos of them all putting it up with the kind of weird far-right AI music backgrounds going on. We found his Facebook page and he only had about 6 friends on there, so we just looked up all of them. One of them was Lee Twomley, who looks remarkably similar to Salford T-Bone, and as it turns out, as you mentioned a minute ago, there was a Hope Not Hate article from only about a couple of weeks ago where Lee Twomley had been at the front of the Britain First march for remigration in Manchester, and they'd linked that back to an incident in 2016, which was when he was convicted of smuggling or attempting to smuggle, I should say, 4 Vietnamese migrants into the country. And that was the process. Basically, it was obvious that they were one and the same.
What's your understanding of why? I don't know if it's the case everywhere, but why the people behind the Raise the Flags movement in Manchester, I suppose, wanted to remain anonymous or at least pseudonymous? Is it because Lee Twomley has this embarrassing background and sort of didn't want the two connected, or is that sort of part of the strategy with the Raise the Flags to make it somewhat anonymous? Because I suppose your reporting, what you basically did was connect a fake profile with a real person. But why was there a fake profile in the first place?
You could certainly guess that Lee Twomley is embarrassed about the contradiction between his sort of current political motivations and his past. When I spoke to another member of their group, a woman called Emma, she was sort of trying to brush all of that off as, a completely irrelevant connection and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I don't know for absolute certainty why they're trying to sort of remain vaguely anonymous. I mean, they've also got like members of organised sort of far right groups, like Britain First co-leader Ashley Simon was one of their little troop going around putting the flags up. I suppose maybe they also benefit from the idea that people might have that it's sort of ordinary as they would say, ordinary fed up Britons, kind of standing up, as opposed to sort of links to organised far right groups, which makes it look a lot murkier.
So it wasn't just this prior conviction for illegally smuggling migrants, which, I mean, you can't make it up. There's a video of him appearing to slap a woman. Well, not appear. I mean, he does slap a woman. The recent Britain First protest. So it sort of looked like she was trying to knock a camera out of his hand, and then he responded by slapping her. My understanding is you've put that to him. You said sort of at the very beginning of this interview, you're still getting messages from Lee Twomley. What's he saying? What's his responses to what you're putting to him?
I spent most of Friday last week trying to get hold of him, including going to an address that I thought was his. Eventually, he kind of got in touch with us via text, and we put a series of allegations to him, including, the contradiction between his prior convictions and his current antics, and that incident that you described there in Piccadilly Gardens, where he's slapped a woman in the face. To which he responded only "old news" was his 2-word response. But after the piece kind of came out, we've had a lot more from him over the weekend. I've had a sort of series of sort of mildly threatening voicemail messages from Mr. Twomley, which I probably can't repeat on your show. But he's been more vocal since than before the piece.
Well, he's a man with a criminal past, I suppose. Your article was a bit of a broader report as well, wasn't it, on the Raise the Flags movement in Manchester? You sort of talked to people around the city, what they thought of it. And I suppose there is, I mean, you've intimated towards it before, but there is a sort of big public debate going on about whether this is a sort of bottom-up movement by ordinary Brits who are sort of fed up of Britishness being denigrated or not properly celebrated, and it being something which is basically the creation of the organised far right. I suppose the Lee Twomley connection here suggests the latter. Did you discover anything to suggest that the former also does have something to do with it? Did you see a sort of, when you're walking around town talking to people investigating who's doing this, did you also see sort of ordinary fed up residents who felt proud of the flag?
I spoke to a lot of residents who sort of suspected that that's what it was, who would have suspected that the people putting these flags up were just, as you say, ordinary fed up residents who wouldn't have necessarily expected or assumed that there would be an organised far right connection, and whose opinions tended to be kind of indifferent. Not like, there wasn't so much like massive, we're massively proud, this is a wonderful thing, except from a couple of right wing councillors who you'd kind of expect that kind of thing from. But no, there wasn't a lot of like, this is highly concerning, this is obviously the far right out on our streets hanging flags either. I'd say the kind of main kind of emotion that we got back when I went round on Wednesday afternoon in Salford was kind of indifference, and not like, as I say, not like a kind of this is obviously the work of the far right, the hand of the far right. But when you look into these things, it's you're never surprised to find that is what it is a lot of the time.
Finally, I suppose, is indifference the right word? I suppose you spoke to members of Manchester Council, it's obviously Labour controlled, and they've, I suppose, decided not really to react to these flags being put up. At least at the time that you published the article, they weren't bringing them down. And my understanding from the councillors you quoted is that they thought that would play into the hands of the far right, because then they could say, oh, the England flag is being censored, and that would become a call to arms. So I suppose, could you talk about that? What is the council's strategy? Are they just going to leave up the flags indefinitely?
Yeah, I don't think it's absolutely clear. I mean, because the councillor is only one councillor who came out on the radio the morning after they went up, a guy called Pat Carney. It's a sort of long-time Manchester councillor who came out and said that they'll stay up. It would be a mistake to take them down. I think they've kind of seen what had happened in Birmingham, where it's all swelled out of Birmingham, and it's become a kind of culture war point, I guess you'd say. And they kind of felt that if they go down that line, it would embolden them. It would allow them to make the argument that Manchester City Council is unpatriotic and hates the sight of the flag in public spaces, etc., etc. So they felt it was the wiser strategy, at least at first, to to leave them in place. I don't know what they'll do eventually. I mean, I suppose a lot of them are quite like cheap flags. I suppose like they'll get pretty tatty and battered, and eventually they'll be able to use that justification to take them down. But I think they just think for the time being, it makes sense to not make a huge thing of it and just leave it and to not, play into their hands, as it were.
That was Jack Walton from Manchester Mill speaking to me earlier. I'm going to go to Ash in one moment for her views on the England flags and Union Jacks being put up around the country. First, though, let's hear the view of our Prime Minister.
I'm a supporter of flags.
You are sitting with one. You've got a Union Jack behind you.
I've got one behind me. Are you
a supporter of people painting roundabouts and hanging them from lampposts?
Look, I'm the leader of the Labour Party who puts the Union Jack on our Labour Party membership cards. I always sit in front of a Union Jack. I've been doing it for years, and it attracted a lot of comment when I started doing it. And in our flat, which is upstairs from here, as you know, we've got the St George's flag in our flat.
So you're encouraging people to put up more flags?
I'm very encouraging of flags. I think they're patriotic, and I think they're a great symbol of our nation. I don't think they should be devalued, belittled, and I think sometimes when they're used purely for divisive purposes, it actually devalues the flag. I don't want to see that. I'm proud of our flag. I sit in front of our flag, and I'm very, very proud to do so.
I'm a supporter of flags is such a Keir Starmer statement because it means absolutely nothing. Ash, I mean, you can comment on Keir Starmer, you can comment on the broader Raise the Flags movement. How are you relating to all of this?
I'm a supporter of flags. I'm a lover of lamp. I mean, it's just, can he not talk like a normal person? I mean, he just comes across like a badly programmed AI a lot of the time. But he's not unique to this. I mean, I remember when, this would have been 2014, 2015, something like that, when Ed Miliband was asked about how he felt when he saw a white van with an England flag on it. He went, well, I feel a tremendous amount of respect. How politicians respond when they're being asked to sort of reply to these completely fatuous questions is astonishing. It's like they've never heard another human being speak before. I mean, it really is a masterclass in Starmerism there, because you do actually have a substantive issue there, which is, regardless of what you think about flags being displayed, do you agree with people, breaking the law? So, graffiti, defacement, and using the flag in order to intimidate racial minorities. I mean, this is the easiest question for a supposedly Labour Prime Minister to answer, because then what you do is you say, well, to me, the flag means this. You make a case for inclusivity and, the fact that we are a multi-ethnic democracy, that, England and the UK is this rich tradition of tolerance, blah, 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 blah. And when people use it for the purposes of intimidation, that's absolutely not who we are. Instead, it was, when you see it used for divisive purposes, I think that actually devalues the flag. I mean, it's just so contentless. As for I'm a supporter of flags. I've got a St George's flag in my house. I mean, I think most people don't do that. And that's fine. It doesn't mean that they don't like this country. It doesn't mean that they won't, get out England flag bunting, during the Euros or the World Cup or something. I just think most people don't do that. And I think this is the thing about sort of, and the far right have understood this very well, is that it's very easy to manufacture media stories, particularly around flags, and you get people to move the dial on what's normal. It's not really normal in this country to display national flags all the time. I mean, you might think that it should be, and that's fine. That's your opinion, but that's not the norm in this country. It's much more the norm in a place like America. I'd also say that we have a lot less visibility for, our national flags in this country compared to European countries where, your average post office has got your regional flag, your national flag, and the EU flag, fluttering all together. Again, you can have an argument about that, or a discussion about, well, maybe we should be more like that. Maybe we should fly, city flags, regional flags, national flags, from municipal buildings. That's fine. But there's something really specific and particular that's going on right now, which is that it's not a discussion about, yes, we want to see flags displayed from civic buildings. It's coming within this context of a campaign of intimidation against asylum seekers, and it's being used specifically to try and intimidate people of color in this country. I mean, when someone's breaking into a mosque and they're spray painting a St. George's cross, they're not doing that out of love of country. They're not doing it because they would actually really prefer it if their town hall flew a St. George's cross. They're doing it because it's a part of racist intimidation. And I think that any prime minister, regardless of whether they're Labour or not, I think a Tory prime minister, a reasonable political expectation would be for them to condemn the use of the flag for the purposes of racist intimidation. And I think it is so telling of Keir Starmer's lack of backbone and lack of political instinct that he's unable to do that.
I suppose why this was sort of, in a way, a smart campaign by the far right is because it's often ambiguous whether or not the flag is being used as a symbol of racist intimidation. So obviously in a situation where someone's broken into a mosque and sprayed it on the wall, or someone sprayed a Chinese takeaway, or I've read reports of sort of the flag appearing outside the only black family on a street or whatever, it is clear. But I suppose for him, he's thinking the question of, is it, because in a way they want him to call the flag racist so that then they can whip up a whole, I mean, I think universally the issue with Keir Starmer is any answer he gives is always unconvincing because he's a deeply unconvincing person who doesn't sound barely human. But I can see why lots of people are finding, are reluctant to sort of, in a broad sweeping way, say the flags are being used as a method of racial intimidation, because then it's ambiguous to argue which are and which aren't. I suppose, what would you say to that?
I think that, so firstly, I think that when you've got people putting it up in the context is these anti-asylum protests, those things are linked. I've got no problem with people making the flag more visible in general. I actually think, though, if we did that, it wouldn't satisfy what people are really feeling the loss of, which is, I think, particularly in England. And so England is being distinct from Wales and from Scotland. And of course, Ireland is its own political context. But particularly in England, we just gleefully gutted our sense of English culture. And I think that's because we really, really embraced sort of Americanism, and we destroyed so many of our gorgeous city and town centres, replaced it with car parks, replaced it with dual carriageways, replaced it with, multi-screen cinemas and the Hollywood Bowl. And we feel that sort of loss of, an English culture that anyone can participate in. And when you compare, English high streets to high streets in other European countries, we've got far fewer sort of, what you might call a mom and pop shop, sort of family owned and family run businesses and shops where you don't have, the biggest client base in the world, but you can sell your little thing. And whenever you go on holiday in Europe, you go, oh my God, I can't believe it. There's a shop which is only selling taps and it's somehow not part of a chain. We've been really, really, really bad at protecting those things. And we've just handed it over to the global landlord class. So I also think that if you had a heightened visibility of the St. George's Cross or the Union Jack, that's not enough to create a national culture. We gave that away to American-style capitalism.
I think it's a very good point. You're saying in the European cities, they have flags outside the post office. They often have very beautiful post offices, which are run by the state, whereas ours have all been sold off, and now the post offices are just in the back of a shop, where it looked rather odd to have a massive Union Jack outside your local corner shop, which is where most post offices are now.